About a year and a half ago, I threw away almost everything I knew about astrology because of this book. And in this video, I'm going to tell you my story. Hi, I'm Nadia. I'm neurospicy. I'm also an astrologer. And I'm going to tell you about my story going from a modern philosophical and evolutionary astrologist to a Hellenistic data-driven one, and why it fundamentally changed the way I look at astrology. Now, I want to make something completely clear off the bat. I don't think modern astrology is wrong. I also don't think that whole sign should be held up as the only system used. I do think there's a place at time where Placidids certainly outperform whole sign, but it's rare for me in my practice. So about a year and a half ago, I started thinking of offering astrology to my clients in tech and business, because I did attract quite a few clients that were in a more of a health and wellness niche. As I was talking to clients, mentioned how much astrology has changed my life, they were kind of like, oh, we're intrigued. I did a couple of reports and readings at a ridiculously low price because I was still learning. And it came to a point where I'm like, okay, I know quite a lot now about modern astrology. And I'm quite happy where I am. Do I still have questions? Heck yes. Is there still stuff that doesn't make sense to me? Yes. I think there will always be more things you can learn in astrology. However, I felt like I didn't have a good basis. And one thing about me, I do not like boring things. And I thought Hellenistic astrology, which I knew very little about, and like old ancient astrology, was boring. And I thought the modern astrology was where it was at. I was excited about it. So I thought, well, why don't I pick up this book? It's one of the most respected Hellenistic books. It's quite thick, but I'll make it through it. I got it on my Kindle. I'll make it through it, and then at least I'll have some like structure to it. And I read the foreword because I've always liked reading the foreword. Something jumped out at me, and I thought, I don't think that's like me at all. You see, Demetra George, she wrote the foreword, and she was talking about Chris Brennan, who is now one of the most respected Hellenistic astrologers. She talked about him as a student when he entered her astrology school. And this part sticked out like a sore thumb, so I wanted to read it to you. Here she's talking about him. His first love was not Hellenistic astrology. I smile remembering his conviction that modern psychological astrology was where it was at, and how he couldn't wait to begin studying it further. He tried organizing his classmates to protest the requirement that they had to take a prerequisite class because that antiquated old-school astrology was just a waste of time. But the curriculum prevailed, and when he entered my Hellenistic classroom in the winter of 2004, it was as if he suddenly, unexpectedly rediscovered the place where he knew he had always belonged. I have goosebumps reading that because that was exactly my experience. And I'll give you two analogies to explain how big of a aha moment that was for me. On one hand, it felt like with astrology, I have been reading volume 2 and volume 3 and volume 4 of a book series. A lot of the plot and character building and world building was lost to me because I didn't read part 1. And this book felt like I was finally reading the first of the series, and now all of the other things I read and studied and used made better sense. Another way you can look at it is I used to be in tech, so it felt like in tech we have like 3 bits. If you think of technology, you have the back end, that is where all of the data gets processed, where you have a database. That is kind of like the engine room. And on the other end, you have the UI UX. That is the pretty thing that you work with, the pretty thing that clicks all the buttons and things light up. And in the middle, you kind of have your software, your coding that connect these two. Now, with astrology, it felt like I understood some of the connection. I understood the pretty front end, but I didn't understand the back end, the source code that shows me everything until I read Hellenistic astrology. I still use Placidus. I still use modern astrology. Heck, most of my reports include the outer planets because I'm very passionate about using them. However, when you look at astrology from an ancient perspective, it answers so many questions. The only question it answers isn't whether you align with whole sign better than Placidus. It's, do you understand the source code of you as a human? What really cinched it for me and what really made it a moment of, my goodness, I get this now, was when I did my first perfection analysis and my first zodiacal return. It felt like I was reading a step by step of my entire life, down to the year my father died, the year I had critical illnesses, the year we moved. All of these things in my life was literally within days of certain markers. That made me sit up straight, because that is incredibly powerful. If you know your past and you know how it's triggered things in your past, you can pretty accurately predict what certain things will affect you going forward. And if you're a ride or die and you made it to the end of this very rambly video about me fangirling about Hellenistic astrology and queer spirit, thank you very much. I do appreciate you more than I can say in words. I've got a question for you. And I'm not going to lie, it will colour the way I see you as a human. I might judge you a little bit. I'll still love you, and I'll still send you hugs if you're a ride or die, but I will judge you. Are you a Android or an Apple person? I'm going to leave it at that. But I need to know.